So listen, the reason why I'm coming on today is I want to kind of share some things that I think could be beneficial to the average individual, and kind of give you some concepts, just maybe another paradigm of looking at how your money works. So one of those paradigms I like to kind of expose to people is premised by this rule of 72. And I say this, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I want to make sure you understand. I think most people are in a system designed for them to fail when it's concerned about their money, and they don't understand that. They don't know, they don't realize that. I know that the metrics are there's trillions of dollars in bank accounts and money markets. And here's the challenge with your funds being in those places, right? You're not making any money with it, right? Somebody's making money on your money. It's not you. And so what I want to communicate is how you can move from somebody else making money on your money and you making money on your money, right? So the rule of 72 basically states whatever interest rate you're making, if you divide it into 72, it tells you approximately how long it takes for your money to double. Now, here are the implications. Well, let's look at this right quick. So let's say now the average interest rate for a savings account, a brick and mortar savings account, is between 0.2 to 0.5%. So Navy Fed or Bank of America, those kind of banks, brick and mortar, yeah, it's not a whole lot, between 0.2 to 0.5%. You might online, you might find some banks that can give you more than that. That will give you more than that. But brick and mortar, and that's where most people have their funds at, right? They're not giving a whole lot of interest. But let's say your bank does give you 1% on your money. You can see what my slide says, right? That it doesn't take 72, let's say one going to 72 times, not 72 hours. A lot of people think that. And I ask this question also because I often ask this question when I'm giving this presentation. Like, how long do you think it'll take for your money to double? You know, they say 2 weeks, 2 years, or something to that effect. And then their mind is blown when I show them these matrix, right? Because the answer at 1% interest is 72. Not hours, not days, not weeks, not even months, but years. It would take 72 years for 10 grand to become 20 grand in a bank account that's giving you 1% interest. And remember, you're not getting that. You're getting half to a fifth of that, right? So for a CD, some people feel like CDs are relatively safe, not horrible. 6 goes into 72 12 times. So it'll take 12 years for your money to double. Not horrible, right? It's better than 72. It's a lot better than 72. But I always ask this question. If you can make more money, would you? And most people with common sense, and I know common sense ain't common, right? But most people with common sense say, hey, if I can make more money, I would. And so there is opportunities for you to make 12% interest out there. There are variable mutual funds, variable mutual funds out there that varies, but there are several mutual funds that since inception have made over 12%. You just need to know where to get them. I know. You just know where to find them. You need to find somebody who's qualified to get you in them, right? I'm not making this is not advertisement, but I'm just letting you know. All right. So here's the reality. You have 3 options here. You have 12%, 6%, 1%. Most people with common sense, they would choose which one. You would agree, the 12%. Why they don't have it? They don't know where to get it. Nobody's telling them that. Nobody's having these kind of conversations. And the last part is oftentimes, if you want to get access to that 12%, you got to have a big nest egg of resources, a lot of money in order to get into that investment. What if there was a way for you to get into a professionally managed portfolio like the big boys, but you didn't have to have big boy money? You need to find a place to get that from. And I and some other qualified individuals can show you how to do that. So here's the rule of 72. And basically, here's some implications that we don't look at, right? The first implication is the fact that the banks know this rule better than us. And prior to 2010, the banks can lend out up to 90% of your money. Now the banks can lend out literally all your money. But prior to 2010, they can lend up to 90% of your money. And they can make on a credit card 30%, 18, 20% on personal loans, right? Your money for the banks double over 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years, but they don't have to pay you back to year 72. Now, is that fair? Do you think it's fair? If you feel like it's fair, inbox me. I got some swamp land in Florida I can sell you, right? No, it's not fair, and there are alternatives. And you should look for an alternative. Now, the other part that I want to bring out is the fact that things cost more than it used to. I remember being a little kid, man, give me $1, man, I'm rich. I can get me a pop and 50 the red cookies, the little red butter cookies. Oh, I love those jokers, man. I can get a pop, 50 cookies, or a pop, 25 cookies, and a bag of chips. Right? You give me $10, man. I'm rich. I'm straight rich. $10 don't go nowhere. $10 is a you can't buy a Big Mac meal with $10 today. Right? That's what inflation means. I mean, the cost of everything, everyday things are going up. And right now, we know what inflation look like is at the gas pump. Right? So that is going on. And listen, a healthy level of inflation is about 3% because that's a healthy level of the economy growing, right? So we want positive growth in the economy. And generally when that happens, the inflation goes up and that's comfortable, right? That's okay. We can deal with that, but you can't deal with that if your money's going backwards. Here's what I mean by that. If you're making less than 1% on your money in the bank, but inflation is going up traditionally 3%, you're losing 2.5%. You're losing for every $1,000 you have. Go ahead and take about $3 and burn it in the backyard, because that's what's happening to your money. That's what's happening. Take about $20. Take $20 or $30 and burn it in the backyard, because that's what's happened to your money. You're losing real buying power when you're not at least keeping up with inflation. And generally, you don't do that in your bank. So that is the reason why I say that most people in the system designed for the family don't realize it, because somebody's taking advantage of them, and they're not taking advantage of their situation. Now, the next thing I want to communicate to you is the power of compound interest. And that's important, but I want you to understand, here's another theory that I push out there. Like I tell people, your 401k, your 403b, your TSP, all those things, they're blind. They're great products, they're great services, they're great buckets of money, if you would, that the government allows us to put back for the future. Now, if you got a TSP or 401k and they match and you're not putting your money in there, you're losing money. Do that now, right? Stop saying I can't afford it. Listen, the reality is you literally cannot, you cannot afford not to be invested if they're matching. Even if they're not matching, and it's pre-tax money, you put more money in your pocket now by putting money back for the future. If you got a question about that, do hit me up, but that's reality. So here's the real statement. You can't afford to not put money into your 401k, your 403b, especially if they match. But if they're doing it pre-tax, you probably should be investing there. However, here's the other part. Interest rates matter. We just showed you a moment ago on, how long it'll take for your money to double. But here's another example. The same $50 in disregard of 35 years. 35 years is a long time, right? But don't even worry about that. Here's the point I want to make. The difference between 1% and 6%. 3 times. But the difference between 6 and 12%. 4 times. You see how much your money can quadruple by just going to the next interest rate that's available where you can find it, right? your money can quadruple. But what often happens is people, we have our jobs, and our jobs have these programs. They have a 401k, a 403b, TSP, whatever it is, and we just think it's going to magically have enough money in it for us to retire. That is a myth, and we're living in a myth. We're living in a myth. Unfortunately, one day we're going to have to close that book, and the real life is going to hit us, and real life is going to say, "Man, you don't have enough to retire." Because in today's society, 278,000. If it's only 278,000, I could probably help you retire on maybe $2,500, $3,000 a month. So then we got to figure out how to get your expenses down there, or what part-time job you're gonna have, or what part-time opportunity you're gonna take advantage of, right? Because you probably know, like I know, that most of us can't live off of $3,000 a month for the rest of our lives. Not comfortably. We ain't going on no cruises. We ain't going out to eat. We're not doing those kind of things that our lives are kind of built around, because we've had this level of being comfortable. And your 401k, you have to put a decent amount of money in that thing in order for you to replace your income today. Like that's the whole ideal of putting the money into the 401k. If you're used to making $10,000 a month, and you plan to make $10,000 in retirement, you got to come up with $2.1 million. Real talk. And so if you're not close to that, if you're in your 40s and you're not close to that, we got some work to do. If you're in your 30s, man, we can do some magic. If you're in your 50s, you need to come see me for real. Because if you used to making $10,000 a month, now if you used to making half of that, obviously the number would be half, right? You can live off of $1.1 million. But if you're trying to replace your whole income with your TSP, and this is your only retirement, and I know oftentimes your TSP or your 401k and all that kind of stuff, and oftentimes outside of the military, and even the military did their adjustment, there's not a whole lot of pension out there, right? And so this is a need. The need is to understand this and have an assessment. That's what I offer. I offer an assessment to see where you are, and then see how close we can get to you where you want to be. And the sooner you get to me, the sooner we can take a look. If there's a need for course correction, we can do that. And then we can put you on that path where you are at $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month, if that's where you want to be, right? But you got to have some funds to get there, and that's why not having the products and the services, that's important, but having a coach on the outside is as important, because the coach can say, hey, we need to course correct and get you on point to retire the way you want to. Okay?